Hey, what's going on, guys? You got TLR here, and I've got some very exciting news. I'm happy to announce that I will be coaching the Cleveland Escavaliers in the Puckle Draft League, a tier-based draft league hosted by Puckle Podcast. And with me today, I do have the 10 team members that I have drafted for this league. So basically what this video is going to be, I'm going to show you which Pokemon I drafted and, give a little summary on why I drafted them and how I think they'll perform in this league. So before we get started, I just wanted to say that this isn't Smogon tier based. So as you can see, I do have Zapdos, Gengar, Clefable, and Gyarados, all Pokemon in the OU tier. So if it's a little weird why I would have 4 OU Pokemon, that is why. They're tiered by the heads of the tournament. The people who set up the tournament tiered each Pokemon based on how they thought they would perform in a tier-based draft league, which makes sense because stuff like Escavaliers, which can be a lot more versatile in a tier-based draft league, probably deserves a little higher tiering than it would in Smogon, where it doesn't really perform when you've got every single Pokemon. It doesn't perform as well when you've got every single your opponent can have every single Pokemon in the game at their disposal. You know what I'm saying? I hope so. Anyway, yep, let's just hop right into it with the Pokemon I drafted first, and that is going to be Mega Gyarados. So I wanted to get a powerful Mega, so I decided to go straight for Mega Gyarados because mostly because, as you can see here, 155 attack, that is a lot. That is not something you really want to switch into. With full investment, it hits 200 and I can't type, sorry. It hits 207 attack at level 50. So that is a lot, and it can even bolster it with the Dragon Dance. So, oops, it keeps setting it to 0 attack IDs. So that's 207, and that's only with a Jolly nature. With an Adamant nature, you hit 227. Bolstered by Dragon Dance, there's nothing that really wants to take a hit from that. And with the ability Mold Breaker, even unaware Pokemon aren't going to be safe because you just kill them through their ability. They can't stop you from boosting. So I think Mega Gyarados is a really solid pick. Also, being a water type, I think water types are just, not just really good in Draft League, but really good in general just because, very few weaknesses as well as not very many Pokemon that can take water type hits without, special conditions. You've got bulky grass types like Tangrowth. If you're looking right here, I have Tangela, so don't have to worry about that one. But basically, if I can pick off the bulky grass type or the bulky water type, Gyarados can just wreak havoc. Thanks to its water typing, which is just really balanced typing overall. Speaking of bulky water types, Gyarados, even though it has that really high base 155 attack, does not sacrifice any bulk at all, rocking 95 HP, 109 defense, and 130 special defense. If I needed to, it could definitely take hits, especially since before it Mega Evolves, I can have the Intimidate ability, to lower my opponent's attack upon switching. So, even before it Mega Evolves, it's already putting in some work thanks to that Intimidate ability, which also really helps it set up. Now, even Dragon Dance is a great way to run Gyarados, but that's not the only way to run Gyarados. Now, if we scroll through the list of moves it gets, you can see it gets stuff like Reflect, but I don't think I'll run that. Rest and Sleep Talk is actually one set I wanted to go over, definitely. Thanks to that really high bulk, if I could run a Rest, Sleep Talk, Dragon Dance set, which can really wreck a bulkier teams, because if they can't damage Gyarados enough, or their way of dealing with Gyarados is residual damage through Toxic or Will-O-Wisp, the Rest Sleep Talker is really just going to destroy those teams, because it pretty much prevents residual from being able to take out Gyarados. You really just have to. It forces my opponent to carry a Pokemon that can do a lot of damage immediately to Gyarados, which, you know, if I see my opponent doesn't have a way to really do that, Gyarados is Sleep Talk Gyarados is something that could really work in that situation. Other options it has for like tech moves is Taunt. I really like Taunt on this because with the Mold Breaker ability, Taunt actually goes through Magic Bounce. So let's say my opponent tries to Will-O-Wisp me with Mega Sableye, and they think, oh, you can't stop this because I have Magic Bounce. I can taunt him through the Magic Bounce and prevent myself from getting Will-O-Wisped, or prevent him from being able to recover. So Gyarados, great stall breaker, really destroys bulkier teams, as well as putting a lot of pressure on more frail teams as well, just because, you know, Gargantuan attack stat, as well as access to Dragon Dance. It's just nothing you really want to... it's nothing you really want to know your opponent has and you don't. Other than that, he does get some interesting moves like Thunder Wave, he gets Roar, he gets Flamethrower, so he can even tech some pretty interesting stuff. But the main appeal of Gyarados to me, Mega Gyarados to me, was that really high attack stat and the fact that he can just put out so much damage, and it doesn't take a lot for him to just threaten stuff. He just threatens stuff immediately, and if you let him get going, that might just end the game right there. So really like Mega Gyarados, really happy I got this Pokemon. And moving on to the next one, I drafted Clefable, and I mean, there's no I'm sure there's not real much surprise as to why I would draft Clefable. Just a really versatile Pokemon overall, rocking 95 HP, 73 defense, and 90 speed def. Means you can run physically defensive spreads or specially defensive spreads, and just tank hits with access to soft boiled. I can keep myself healthy, as well as wish to not only keep myself healthy but other teammates as well. Which actually pairs really well with Bronzong, which I'll get to as soon as I get to Bronzong. But being able to Wish Pass and keep other Pokemon healthy that can't keep themselves healthy is really nice. And Aromatherapy, so I can Cleric Pokemon in case I am worried about getting Toxic stalled, or I need my... Let's say I'm running a physical Nidoking that week and I need to prevent it from getting burned. Aromatherapy can really help there. But obviously, support moves aren't all it can rock. As you can see, it has a pretty good offensive move pool as well, rocking stuff like Flamethrower, Grass Knot, which could be interesting tech for stuff like Hippowdon. We've got Ice Beam, Knockoff to get rid of items. We've got, of course, the Stab Moonblast, Psychic for poison type, Psyshock if I want to hit on the physical side. Seismic Toss if I just want that solid set damage and don't want to have to worry about resists. Signal Beam maybe if I want to hit Hoopa, or something like that. But yeah, good offensive move pool. Also has access to Thunder Wave and Toxic, can spread status. I can Stealth Rock, which is always helpful. I've got access to Calm Mind if I want to run a more offensive set and want a way to set up. I even have access to Body Slam if I want an offensive move that can paralyze. Like, Clefable has so many options that there is really no way my opponent can know what is going to be rocking that week, and that's why I think Clefable is honestly one of the most solid picks I could have drafted. I'm so glad I got to get this Pokemon. Fairy typing also being extremely good, having the ability Magic Guard so it won't be able to take residual, or I can even go with Unaware if I'm afraid my opponent's going to bring a powerful setup sweeper that might put too much pressure on my team. Unaware Clefable can pretty much just force that setup sweeper to, you know, find a different route to take care of my team, because if it can't do it KO Clefable, a boost ain't going to change that. But yeah, Just the versatility of Clefable, that's exactly why I chose this Pokemon. The next Pokemon is going to be the Shadow of Clefable, as some people, you know, pointed out online. Gengar, one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I just had to draft this Pokemon, and honestly it fits really well on this team as well, because being the poison type allows me to take care of fairies that might threaten Mega Gyarados, stuff like Azumarill and the Tapus, really threatened by Sludge Bomb and Sludge Wave. Just doing so much damage to fairies that aren't like part steel or there's no poison fairy type, but you get the idea. Most fairy types aren't going to want to take a hit from Gengar, since he's rocking that 130 special attack, which is just it's so much, and 110 speed to boost means that he can outspeed a ton, especially with access to the Choice Scarf. Choice Scarf Gengar, as you know, I'm pretty sure most of you know, is a very solid set in OU, and I think it's a very solid set in this draft league as well, because being able to just outspeed pretty much everything and hit it still really hard thanks to 130 special attack is nice. But of course, that's not all he does. Ghost type moves are pretty hard to switch into, as well as only one type is immune and only one type resists. So having access to Stab Shadow Ball means that if my opponent doesn't have a normal or a dark type Pokemon, they're going to be taking a pretty decent chunk from Shadow Ball. Especially if I wanted to opt to go power over speed, and on a Choice Spec set, Choice Spec Shadow Ball is just, it's pretty powerful. And of course, other offensive options include Dazzling Gleam, which can hit fairies. He's got Focus Blast, which paired alongside Shadow Ball gives you basically perfect coverage, since there is no normal Ghost type at the moment, which would be the only typing that would resist the combination of those two types. He's also got stuff like Giga Drain. He's got Hex. Maybe if I want to run a Willow Hex set 1 week, that could work. He's got Hidden Power, so Hidden Power Fire could work to hit Caesar. Hidden Power Ice could work to hit Zygarde or Garchomp or Landorus, and he also has, interestingly enough, where is it? Here it is. Icy Wind. All right. Which is some really interesting tech, because if I pair that with the Icium Z, Sub-Zero Slammer from Gengar might just pick up a surprise KO or two if my opponent's not prepared for it. If you're running a especially defensive Zygarde and you switch it into my Gengar thinking you're gonna knock me out with 1,000 arrows, you might not like what's coming your way. So that's also really interesting. Clear Smog can prevent my opponent from setting up. Foul Play can maybe, with a Scarf, catch a Swords Dance Pokemon off guard. Yeah. Basically, a lot of good offensive options, but it doesn't stop there. He also has some pretty good support options as well, even though his bulk isn't that great, rocking 60 HP, 60 defense, and 75 special defense. He won't be taking hits too much, but he can still support, you know, play a bit of support role with stuff like Destiny Bond, Disable. He's got Haze, if I want to be able to maybe stop a setup sweeper that's Steel type and immune to Clear Smog. He's got Knock Off, just like Clefable. Wouldn't be doing too much since it doesn't have a lot of attack stat, but it's nice for getting rid of my opponent's items. I've got Parasong and Pain Split. I've got access to Taunt. I've got access to Substitute, which can work really well with Will-O-Wisp. Access to Trick, which works pretty well on choice sets. So Gengar, while obviously being more of an offensive Pokemon, also has some tricks up his sleeve. Ha ha ha. Sorry. I had to. I'm really sorry about that one. But yeah, it can carry some neat support moves that might be able to catch my opponent off guard and maybe gain me some momentum that might put me back in a battle that I might be behind in. So obviously Gengar is one of my favorite Pokemon, so I'm really happy to draft draft it, but I think it also works really well just because it's really good um, stats and its typing is good. Really, the only bad thing about Gengar is its bulk. It's not going to be taking hits for very long, but other than that, just a really solid pick overall, and I'm really happy that I got this mod. Next Pokemon I drafted, since I had 2 offensive Pokemon and 1 defensive Pokemon, I opted to get another defensive Pokemon, so I went for Bronzong. A bulky Steel type is never bad, especially when I want to switch into Fairies, since Gengar won't be taking hits very well. Bronzong can do that for him. Able to switch into the likes of Moonblast from Tapu Lele, Hyper Voice from Mega Gardevoir. As you can see, rocking 116 special defense allows him to take hits on the special side very well. And he's also got 116 defense, so maybe if I wanted to run a physically defensive set 1 week, I could do that as well. Although I do think its Steel Psychic typing does make for a better specially defensive Pokemon. But, you know, having that 116 base defense to boot means that if I feel like physically defensive is more viable against my opponent's draft, then definitely an option I can run, so that's really nice. And while its attack stats aren't super high at 89 and 79, they're also not bad. They're not too bad, especially with a lot of offensive moves I can run, like Earthquake, Flash Cannon, Grass Knot, Gyro Ball. You could even run Hit Power Fire if I wanted to check Caesar, Hit Power Ice if I wanted to check Orlando, especially since he has access to the Levitate ability. It means he resists all 3 of Lando's common moves, being Earthquake, Stone Edge, and Fly/Supersonic Sky Strike. Bronzong, just a really good answer to Lando right there. Obviously, there's only going to be 1 person running Lando in the league, but you know, he might want to think twice about running maybe a Z move Lando, since I do have this Bronzong. Other than that, I also have Iron Head, I've got Psychic and Psyshock, I've got Shadow Ball, Signal Beam, Zen Headbutt, and if I wanted to, I could even run Heavy Metal plus Heavy Slam, which could pick up a surprise KO if they're calcing for Gyro Ball, or something like that. So, yeah, good offensive move pool, honestly, for a defensive Pokemon. But, you know, as a more support Pokemon, the main role is to be supporting the team. Luckily, he has the tools to do that, access to dual screens. So if I wanted to run, you know, Light Clay dual screens to help Gyarados, or maybe Calm Mind Clefable setup, I could do that. He's got access to Stealth Rocks if I wanted to have him be the rocker instead of Clefable or something like that. Access to Toxic. I could even run Trick plus a Choice Banded set, which could be kind of interesting. Definitely something that I don't think a lot of people would, you know, think of. But yeah, just really good Pokemon, I think, because with these really high defense stats, I can basically cater it to my needs according to my opponent's draft. So if I need a physically defensive Bronzong 1 week, I can do that. If I need specially defensive 1 week, I can do that. If I need offensive 1 week, I could even do that, although I don't know how many times I'm going to decide offensive Bronzong is the play. But honestly, really good defensive typing, along with really good defenses, and really good abilities. Levitate obviously being probably the most viable, but Heat Proof also not being bad, and then Heavy Metal, since he does have access to the Heavy Slam, can also come in handy, maybe. You might see me run it 1 week, don't sleep. Okay, but yeah, that's the reason I drafted this Pokemon, just a solid bulky Pokemon overall, and I definitely did not want all my Pokemon to be offensive. Speaking of bulk, my next draft was Zapdos, who's obviously, as you can see, has an EV spread that seems to be catered towards offense, But rocking 90 HP, 85 defense, and 90 SPDF is not bad, allowing him to take hits and access to reliable recovery and roost, access to hazard control in defog, access to status passing or status spreading with Thunder Wave and Toxic. Whirlwind can prevent my opponent from setting up. So just the ability for this Pokemon to run a bulky set really helps because, you know, gives me a ground immunity that's not Levitate. So if my opponent has like a Mold Breaker, Excadrill, won't be breaking through a defensive Zapdos just because of his nice defensive typing and nice, pretty decent defenses. But, you know, of course, you do see it has 125 special attack, 100 speed, an EV base stat that seem to be catered towards offense. So if I want to, of course, I do have access to Heat Wave, have access to, of course, Electric Stabs and stuff like Discharge and Thunderbolt. I have access to Hit Power Ice, Hit Power Grass if I want to hit a Water Ground type like Gastrodon or Swampert, access to Signal Beam if I want to do a little bit more damage to Grass types, access to Volt Switch and U-Turn to gain momentum, and even access to maybe Hidden Power Flying if I wanted to run a Flying type stab. So Zapdos being very versatile in the fact that it has the defenses and the defensive typing to play bulky, but also the offenses and the offensive move pool to play offense if I needed to. So Zapdos, really like this pick because for the reason I just said, I really like versatility in draft leagues, and when a Pokemon can perform more than one role, it really stands out to me. So that's exactly why I picked Zapdos. Also, of course, being a solid electric type, I really wanted one of those to deal with, you know, opposing bulky water types. Also deals with flying types, and flying types, water types, and you know, stuff like that. So I do think Zapdos is going to be putting in a lot of work. On to the next one, another bulky Pokemon. Drafted Tangela, wanted to get a good grass type, and Tangrowth was taken. I was really hoping to get Tangrowth, but that was taken. So I thought, hey, Tangela has pretty good defenses, right? So along with the Eviolite, 150 defense, it'll take physical hits pretty well. And while 40 def and 65 HP aren't the highest, if I max them out and give it the Eviolite, that way put me at about 151 SPDF, and that's not bad, honestly. So Tangela able to take hits thanks to access to the Eviolite, and of course, as you can see, even without investment, it has 136 defense. And when you add the Eviolite boost onto that, that's almost 200 defense. That's more than Tangrowth gets with investment. Now, of course, Tangrowth also has much more HP, so it'll generally be taking hits better on the physical side anyway. But it just goes to show that Tangela, even though it doesn't have the best defenses in the world, thanks to access to the Eviolite, it definitely is able to take hits. Also, access to the Regenerator ability allows it to heal up even without clicking a healing move, but it does have access to healing moves if it needs to heal manually. Giga Drain can absorb health. Leech Seed also does the same thing. And then Morning Sun, Pain Split, and Synthesis can all, you know, just reliable recovery moves. But of course, that's not the only thing it does. It also has some offensive moves, stuff like Hidden Power Ice and Fire can be used. Grass Knot if I want a little more, or Leaf Storm if I want a little more powerful of a grass type move. Knock Off, again, knocking off items is never bad. Power Whip if maybe I want to turn physical, although 55 attack isn't the greatest. Access to Sleep Powder if I want to, you know, put my opponent to bed. Stun Spore can be good because paralysis could help me outspeed my opponent's faster Pokemon. Sludge Bomb can hit fairies and opposing grass types. Toxic for more status. Just Tangela has a lot of interesting options, and I think it's actually a pretty decent pick, just because bulky grass types aren't like super common. So having one means I should be able to, you know, I won't have to see my opponent have like Crawdaunt and be like, oh shoot, I'm screwed because I don't have any water resist, because, you know, now I have a good water resist. But yeah, while it's not like as versatile as my first picks, you know, having access to Eviolite means I can run Spadaf. But if I don't need the Spadaf, I can even run a physically defensive set as well. And 183 defense boosted by the Eviolite is about 250, and that is more defense than Primal Groudon, I think. So, you know, Tangela doesn't mess around. It takes hits, and honestly, I do like this pick. Especially because Grass pairs well with Gyarados, tanking the Grass type attacks and the Electric type attacks that would be coming towards Gyarados' way is really nice. So that's why I drafted Tangela, and you know, to round out that Fire, Water, Grass core, I drafted Emboar next. While not a very bulky Pokemon, it is very offensive. As you can see, rocking a really good 123 attack and 100 special attack makes it respectable on both sides of the spectrum. And you know, even if you have good attack stats on both sides of the spectrum, it's nothing if you don't have the move pool to abuse it. But luckily, Emboar definitely does have that move pool with access to Earthquake, Fire Blast, Flare Blitz, Flamethrower, Flame Charge, Grass Knot, Focus Blast, Hammer Arm, Head Smash, Heavy Slam, Hidden Power, Poison Jab, Overheat, Low Kick, Stone Edge, Scald. When was the last time you saw a non-water type get Scald? Sucker Punch, Superpower, Thunder Punch, Wild Charge, is that Headbutt? Really great offensive move pool. So, and really great offensive stats. That's exactly the reason I chose Emboar. Nice offensive fire type to round out my Fire, Water, Grass core. But of course, he's not just a fire type, he's also a fighting type. I hadn't drafted a fighting type yet, so I thought, yeah, Emboar being firefighting, just solid offensive typing right there. Access to the Reckless ability, which will boost the power of his Flare Blitz, as well as Wild Charge, which can hit the bulky waters that might want to switch into it. So, and you know, maybe I decide that Reckless isn't going to be the play that week, or maybe I want to run a more specially oriented set. I can even run Blaze and maybe run Substitute, so I can get down into that Blaze range and maybe pick up a KO that my opponent wouldn't expect. So, yeah, really like this pick because while it's not really able to take hits, while 110 HP is good, 65 defenses are not super great. And of course, its 65 speed isn't great as well, although with a Choice Scarf, it is able to outspeed stuff like Tornadus T and Latios and stuff like that. So that might be pretty cool one week if I decide Choice Scarf is the way to go. But yeah, basically being able to attack on both sides of the spectrum means that my opponent won't really be able to switch in as easily to it if they think I'm running physical, so they switch in their physical wall. Let's say they have Hippowdon, they switch in their Hippowdon, and they're like, I have a lot of defense, I can take Flare Blitz pretty well. And then I hit them with the Grass Knot, they're not going to have a good time, you know? So yeah, Emboar having that ability to run both physical and special is really nice. And of course, being a fire type is really nice as well. So my next pick, I wanted a ground type, and I thought Nidoking was the perfect pick because not only is it a powerful ground type with access to the ability Sheer Force, boosting the power of his moves like Earth Power, Sludge Wave. It even gets access to stuff like Flamethrower and Ice Beam. So Life Orb, Sheer Force. I'm sure most of you already know what that does, but oops, that's not a Life Orb. What? Maybe I'll run Lychee Berry one week. Who knows? Sub Lychee Berry? That might be the play. No. But yeah, Life Orb, Sheer Force. Sheer Force cancels out the extra abilities of moves. So as you can see here, 10% chance to lower the target's SPDF by 1. That will go away. Sheer Force will negate that, so it won't have the ability to lower my opponent's SPDF, but it'll increase the power of my moves by 1/3. So it turns Earth Power from a semi-powerful move to a really powerful move. Life Orb further boosting that power and also getting its added effect of losing 1/10 of my max HP negated as well. So basically, I'll be able to get the boost from Life Orb, the attack boost, without having the hindering ability of losing HP. But that only works if I'm using a move that has the extra ability taken away as well. So let's say I wanted to run Superpower. I'm putting this out here because Superpower is actually pretty neat since you do have the 102 base attack. You can even run a physical set. He's got access to stuff like Earthquake, the Elemental Punches, and Poison Jab. So you can run physical, but yeah, stuff like Superpowered Earthquake, since they don't have the added effect that will be negated, will cause me to lose life or recoil. But stuff like Poison Jab and Ice Punch, since they do have a added effect that will be negated, I don't have to take damage from that, which can also help Nidoking take hits. It doesn't have the best defenses, but it doesn't have bad defenses either. 81 HP, 77 defense, and 75 speed means if necessary, this thing can take a hit. 85 speed, while not the greatest, is able to outspeed a good amount of the bulkier metagame stuff like Mandibuzz, Mega Venusaur won't be outspeeding me, and I can just hit them really hard. And if I need to outspeed even faster stuff, Scarf is always an option. I don't have to restrict myself to Life Orb on this Pokemon. But yeah, obviously a really good offensive Pokemon here with the stats that basically says use me offensively. But you know, maybe I want to use a little more supportive of a Nidoking. Luckily, he's got access to supportive moves too. Access to Toxic Spikes, access to Stealth Rock, access to Disable, access to Dragon Tail. He can support the team if he needs to, having some neat techs that can stop my opponent from running rampant. My opponent thinks they can set up their Dragon Dance Zygarde, but I can run Sash Nidoking with Dragon Tail to stop that. Even though there's probably better ways of stopping Dragon Dance Zygarde, that's one way I could deal with it. But yeah, obviously lots of good offensive moves. Some other ones I didn't go over: Mega Horn, Power Up Punch, although wouldn't be able to be used with Sheer Force since it would get that attack boost extra effect negated. Access to Rock Slide, access to Shadow Ball, which would get the Sheer Force boost, so that could be interesting. Access to Sucker Punch if I wanted priority. Access to Thunderbolt, good electric type move. Toxic, and since it's a poison type, Toxic can't miss. Taunt can stop bulkier Pokemon from being able to recover. Roar to stop Trick Room. This is a BGC, but I play so much BGC, Roar always seems like a good option. I don't know how good it would be in singles, but you know. Hey, but you know, Roar plus Toxic Spikes, that might not be a bad combo. Maybe I wanted to run a especially defensive set, maybe 1 week. He could probably take on some electric types like Mega Manectric or Raichu even. I'm pretty sure Raichu is drafted. Toxic Spikes up and then shuffle stuff around with Dragon Tail or Roar, who knows. But yeah, Nidoking, obviously, I chose it mostly because it's a ground type, really solid ground type, but also because it has a really good move pool, really good ability in Sheer Force, and you know, pretty good stats as well. So really, Nidoking, there's nothing bad about it. Really synergizes with my team too. Sure, it's another poison type, but I do have a Psychic Resist in Bronzong, ×4 Psychic Resist, as well as a Psychic Immunity in Mega Gyarados. And of course, another Psychic Resist in the next Pokemon, which I'll get to right now, Escavalier. So I am the Cleveland Escavaliers, so I thought it would only made sense to draft the mascot, but also because this Pokemon has access to a whopping base 135 attack stat and good offensive moves. to abuse with that, like drill run to hit stuff like Keytron. He's got poison jab, though probably wouldn't run that because you hit grass types with Mega Horn and you hit fairy types with Iron Head. But you know, maybe poison jab because it codes Bulu 100% of the time. Access to knockoff, access to pursuit, which is actually one of the biggest reasons why I chose this, because being able to pursuit trap psychic types with this Pokemon can be really helpful, especially if I'm planning to sweep with Gengar or Emboar. As well as access to Swords Dance, which can bolster his attack, and X-Scissor if I don't want to miss. So 135 attack, nothing to laugh at. 105 in both defenses is also pretty good as well. 70 HP means it's not super good, but you know, with the defenses, he'll be able to take hits pretty well. Access to Shell Armor is not a bad ability. Overcoat can also be really helpful if my opponent has like Hail or a Spore Abuser, and then Swarm could even come in handy as well. So. Its abilities aren't like, oh yes, these are the best abilities in the game, but all of them have their niches, and it doesn't have any ability that you'd be like, wow, this is going to be completely useless on Escavalier. So yeah, another bulky steel type, a bug type, which I had drafted so far, so obviously bug type isn't like the greatest type in the game, but having the ability to hit bulky grass types with Mega Horn is really nice. Hit fairy types with Iron Head, trap psychic types with Pursuit, tank hits if I decide to run Assault Vest, or have a massive damage output if I want to run Choice Band. Yeah, so Escavalier drafted because I wanted a Pokemon that could tank hits and dish them out as well, because if you look at my team, besides Mega Gyarados, my offensive Pokemon aren't really like built to be bulky. Emboar, not the greatest defenses. Zapdos has good defenses if you're running a more offensive build. It won't be taking hits like for days like it would if it won't be taking hits as super well like it would if you were running a defensive set. But Escavalier, you know, really good for something that takes hits and dishes out hits as well. So yeah, glad I got this Pokemon because you know, it's a lot more threatening in my hands. Or I guess I should say that it's a lot less threatening when I know my opponent's not going to have it, you know. So, and I do think it's going to put in a good amount of work, just because, you know, one weakness with the bug steel typing, only weakness to fire, means that taking this Pokemon down might be a little more of a chore than my opponent might want to deal with. So, yeah, Escavalier, the mascot, really looking forward to using this Pokemon. And of course, last but not least, we have Cryogonal, my final pick. Now, Cryogonal, not the greatest defense stat with 50. Actually did get a little bit of a buff in his bulk. Now has 80 HP, so you know, can take hits a little bit better. And of course, 135 speed F means on the special side, it'll be taking hits very well. But yeah, I drafted Cryogonal for a few reasons. One, ice typing. I didn't have an ice type yet, and ice type, really good offensive typing. 95 special attack, while it's not super high, is able to kill the things that I would want it to kill. So Garchomp, Lando, Zygarde, all go down to stuff like Ice Beam. And he's also got access to the tech Freeze Dry, so let's say my opponent has bulky water type, that'll take a good chunk from Freeze Dry as well. So that's one reason. The second reason, of course, being the 105 speed. While it doesn't look like it would be very fast, or at least it doesn't in my opinion, it actually is able to outspeed stuff like Garchomp and Mega Medicham and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And it can just do a good chunk to them with Ice Beam or Freeze Dry. Or, well, that's pretty much the extent of its offensive prowess. Obviously, it does have some other interesting offensive moves that might be able to be used, like knockoff or signal beam, but most of the time it's not really going to be used as an offensive Pokemon, and if it is, Ice Beam and Freeze Dry are pretty much the offensive moves I'd be using. So if it's not going to be playing offensive, what will it be doing? Obviously support. So supportive roles, it has the second biggest reason besides it being a fast ice type, is the fact that it has rapid spin. So none of my Pokemon have rapid spin. My only other hazard control, of course, being Zapdos with Defog. But let's say I wanted to run Toxic Spikes Nidoking, and I didn't want to clear all of my hazards that I worked so hard to set up. Rapid Spin Cryogonal can help with that because it will clear my opponent's hazards without clearing my own, which can be really nice. And with 105 base speed, he can usually get off a rapid spin against this Pokemon slower than him before he goes down, so that's really nice. Other than that though, he actually does have a good amount of supportive moves for something that doesn't look like it would get a lot of supportive moves. He gets Aurora Veil. Now I don't have Hail on my team, but I could, I could technically run manual Hail Aurora Veil Cryogonal, but I think it would probably just be better to run dual screens. He does get access to Light Screen and Reflect. So dual screens, Cryogonal could help a setup sweeper like Gyarados or Clefable. Access to Haze can prevent my opponent from trying to set up. Access to Magic Coat can prevent my opponent from setting up hazards. Recover can even keep him healthy. Toxic for status spreading. Really nice. So yeah, while it's not the bulkiest of Pokemon for a supportive role, it's a really nice supportive Pokemon that even has a decent special attack stat, so he can, get a little bit of damage output as well. So I actually really do like Cryogonal, and I'm pretty glad I got this pick, although I didn't think anybody would be trying to grab Cryogonal because it's not a Pokemon you think of very often because, not used a lot, but I looked at it and I'm like, this Pokemon, it has actually a lot of cool moves that I think I could make use of in this format. So that's why I nabbed this thing up right quick. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about Cryogonal, and that's going to finish up the analysis of my team. All Pokemon were mons that I really wanted to pick, so really glad I had a set list of Pokemon I was trying to draft, because with that I was able to not get sniped, I guess, because let's say I did have a Pokemon that I was trying to draft get taken, like Tangrowth for example. I have I have my backup plan in Tangela. But yeah, I'm really glad that I got such a solid draft. Lots of diversity in the typing as well, and not too many repeats. I've got 2 poison types. I've got 2 steel types, and since Gyarados does start out at a flying type, I guess you could also consider that I have 2 flying types as well. But lots of diversity in the typing means that it'll be hard to I think I'll be able to not be weak to any one Pokemon, I guess is a good way of putting it. I think I'll be able to, yeah, build a team for each week that could properly deal with the Pokemon my opponent has drafted as well. So, yeah, that's going to be it for this draft analysis. Look forward to the Cleveland Escavaliers run through in the PDL. I will be uploading team builders and live commentated games to my channel, so those will be coming the next couple of weeks, starting in the next couple of weeks or sooner. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you made it this far, and yeah, wish me luck, and I'll see you guys later.